Okay, everybody, welcome back to Everyman Prepping. And yes, I'm back to the nuclear explosion behind me because the war keeps escalating and escalating. It just won't stop. And the events of the last few days are no different. I wanted to go over them with you quickly just to show you how crazy this situation is getting. So if we jump into it really quickly, the main reason, if you remember, that Russia went on their special operation was to stop basically Ukraine from joining NATO. NATO kept expanding, taking the Baltic states, more countries joined in, and Russia felt they were getting too close, and they thought that Ukraine was gonna, break the Minsk agreement, and they'd join NATO, have hostile, troops right on NATO on Russia's doorstep. So in their mind, they need to stop that. Just like if Mexico joined some Russo-China organization that was fully against the United States and they started sending Russian and Chinese armaments into Mexico, I don't think we'd be too happy about that. So Russia wasn't too happy with Ukraine. But what we have here is, NATO eventually said, oh, Ukraine's never going to join. They're not going to join. Don't worry about Russia. But we see here, just on Wednesday, we see here that Stoltenberg, making remarks with the Finnish Prime Minister, says that they wanted to reaffirm NATO wants to eventually admit Ukraine. So they're telling Russia, we're going to put Ukraine in NATO. Russia will never let that happen. Means we have to go to war. This is going to be decided one way or another. Russia will be defeated, kicked out of Ukraine, and pushed all the way back and basically beaten down to where they won't be a world power anymore, or Russia wins and continues their advance through NATO countries. That's basically what this is saying. It says NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a member of our alliance, but at the same time, that is a long-term perspective. Doesn't matter if it's short-term or long-term. Russia's not going to stand for that. Continue on. This is the Finnish Prime Minister. I see that the future of Ukraine is to be part of a European Union and also a member of NATO. Not helping, Finnish Prime Minister. Like I said, that's the one thing Russia said they will not allow. And this guy from NATO is basically saying, that's what we're going to do. So, yeah, more escalation, craziness. Then we have the events over the last 2 evenings. We're going to go over first the terror attacks, the cross-border terror attacks, and we're also going to talk about the drone strikes. So what we have here is the Kremlin condemned what it called a new terrorist attack on its soil Thursday, carried out by Ukrainian saboteurs who breached a border region. It says militants entered the Bryansk Oblast, which is here in red. You can see where Belarus is, Kiev, Moscow, so you can see where it is. So militants entered that red area on the map there in western Russia and attacked villages there. There was a death of one civilian. I don't know why they're calling it a terrorist attack as opposed to a military attack, but Russia is putting out, that it's a terrorist attack. And it says here that they were under attack by several dozen armed fighters. Supposedly, a child was killed in this. We see here that these militants were, they put out a little saying this is all in Ukrainian or Russian or something, so I'm not going to play it, but they were carrying, a form of Ukrainian flag for probably a military unit. I'm not sure what that symbolizes, but from what I get, they're basically saying, yeah, we're here to attack Russia, blah, blah, blah. It says here, they opened fire on civilians, and they saw that children were in the car. That's from Putin. He didn't address after he met with his Security Council. And, of course, not very happy about this. However, it gets better. The night before that, Monday into Tuesday, a series of drone attacks occurred inside of Russia. They were believed to be launched by the Ukrainians, triggered air raid sirens in Moscow area and other parts of the country, even over St. Petersburg even. One of them reached within 100 kilometers of Moscow. And then Russia's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs said that the attack of drones on aviation facilities in Saratov and Ryazan could not have been carried out without the active assistance of the United States. So what are they saying? They're saying, United States, you basically were part of this, so we're blaming you. So we've had drone attacks inside Russia, cross-border, what Russia's calling a terrorist attack on a couple of towns in there. We had NATO said, yeah, we're letting Ukraine in. All just leading to, why don't we just start launching nukes at each other? But to top it off, the creme de la creme is Dmitry Medvedev. I've talked a lot about him. He has a Telegram channel. He is the Russian deputy chair of the Security Council. They're like our National Security Council. They advise on security matters, national security. And, you might say, well, he's just the deputy chair. How much weight does he hold? Well, you know who the chairman is? It's Putin. So this is Putin's right-hand man. He is number 2 on all security matters, war matters. So what Dmitry says could be coming out of Putin, but he just says it so Putin doesn't get blamed for it. Basically, I see it as anything that Dmitry says is approved by Putin, basically, is the way I see it. And he doesn't pull any punches, like I've said before. So I'm going to read his Telegram post this morning, and we'll talk about it as we go through, because it's pretty enlightening and amazing. It says here, Western analysts reluctantly acknowledge that when NATO specialists teach the Ukrainians, he doesn't say Ukrainians, he uses another word that if I pronounce it, YouTube bans me, but you can read it yourself here. Okay, teach the Ukrainians how to use military equipment in combat. This can be a direct involvement of NATO in the military conflict on the side of the Ukrainian regime. Since the 20s of the last century, the understanding has been established that a country can be recognized as a participant in hostilities if, in addition to supplying weapons, so we know who's been doing that, it trains personnel to handle it. And then he lists some Brian Kellogg Pact and a Budapest Resolution. So, first paragraph, what's he saying? He's saying if you give them weapons and then you train them on those weapons, you're basically part of this hostilities. He's building a narrative so when they attack NATO countries, China, Canada, United States, they have the reason to do it. They're building a case for attacking us. That's what this is. So let me continue. It gets better. This is how it is happening today. Canada and German instructors in the EU are already teaching Ukrainian killers how to handle leopards, meaning the tanks, the leopard tanks. If we imagine that the NATO aircraft delivered in the future will be serviced by their military on the territory of some overgrown Poland, the only possibility, given the deplorable state of the defense industry in Little Russia, I think he's referring to Poland as a Little Russia. It's a little jab into there. The Poles and Russians hate each other, so basically calling Poland a Little Russia. So he says, given the deplorable state of the defense industry in Little Russia, this will be a direct entry of the Atlanticist. Now, what's an Atlanticist? I had to look that up. Like I said, this is Everyman prepping for the Everyman. Total these fancy words. So an Atlanticist basically means someone who supports NATO, Europe, and the United States, and the West. It's basically like, the Atlantic, people in the Atlantic supporting each other. So it's the U.S. supporting NATO with Canada and that. So he means NATO. I don't know why he didn't say NATO, but he sounds fancy. All right, anyway, this says, this will be a direct entry of the Atlanticists into the war against Russia with all the ensuing consequences. What are the consequences? Well, you enter the war with us, we're going to attack you back. And it might not be kinetic, it might be cyber, EMP, financial, chemical, biological, who knows? But he says, you're game now. Continuing, he says, and all persons making decisions on the supply or repair of such equipment or weapons, along with foreign mercenaries and military instructors, will have to be considered as a legitimate military target. So, saying, if you do supply these planes, and you service them even in those countries, they're targets for us to hit in those countries. Building that case so they can start attacking other countries. He says now in the next paragraph, apparently this is the only thing that keeps Western infantiles from handing over aircraft and long-range weapons to Kiev drug addicts. Although not the fact for a long time, the temptation to crush Russia is very great. So he thinks, just like I do, that long-range weapons and planes are coming. It'll happen. It's going to happen. Next paragraph. And one more thing. Today's events have shown who is really supported in the USA, NATO, and EU. So what he's talking about there is those terrorist attacks, the cross-border attack that happens. That's what he's referring to here. So he says, I'll start over. One more thing. Today's events have shown who is really supported in the United States, NATO, and the EU. This is not the freedom-loving people of Ukraine, which does not want to return to the Moscow scoop. Not sure what that means, but I think he's saying that the Ukrainians don't want to go back to being led under Zelensky, basically. They're just, I'm not going to pronounce those two words because YouTube will then ban me. They're just people, terrorist scum, who attack civilians by brandishing a stinky yellow rag, meaning the Ukrainian flag. Let them now be just, they're just terrorist scum who attack civilians by brandishing a stinky yellow rag. Let them now be justified in London, Paris, Berlin, and Washington. So what does that mean? Let them now be justified. He means let terrorist attacks be justified. Let attacks be justified in London, Paris, Berlin, and Washington. Is the attacks going to happen in those foreign countries? Is he just bluffing? Who knows? But he's saying, hey, you did a terrorist attack in our country? Well, let there be terrorist attacks in your country. Remember, right-hand man to Putin has Putin's ear. This is what he's saying. And then it goes on to the last paragraph here. These are your fosterlings, measures. I don't know what a measure is, the word down here. I'm not sure what the heck that is, but whatever that means. These are your fosterlings. Sunak, UK Prime Minister, Macron, France, Schultz, German, and Biden, United States. And our attitude towards you is now the same as towards them. So Russia's attitude towards United States, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom are the same as they have towards terrorists. Basically, he sees us as terrorists. It says, now your countries are participants in the terrorist acts of the Ukrainian regime, and you are direct accomplice of terrorists. So, when you label a country as a terrorist state, or you tell them that they're terrorists and you're supporting terrorists, that gives the other country, in this case it'd be Russia, the full right to go ahead and attack you, to go after you for terrorist attacks, to go after reprisals. He has built a case here in his Telegram post as to attacking all four of those countries and even more of NATO. He threw Canada in there as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this stuff started happening. Like I said, the major escalation, he's kind of laying out a plan, laying out groundwork. Will it happen immediately? Probably not. But can it happen? Probably. They're just telling you they're going to do it. So is this another bluff by Russia? Is this a red line that was crossed that they won't do anything? I don't know, but it keeps building up and building up. So that's all I want to get across to you. There's not much to say about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep prepping. Don't slow down, because they're not slowing down. They're not ramping up the war. They're not slowing down the ramp of the war, so you were not slowed down. You're preparing for what's going to come afterwards, or what could happen if attacks happen within our country. Just imagine what would happen financially, food supplies, money, monetarily, clothing, all this stuff. People are going to freak out. Store shelves are going to be cleared. There's going to be chaos. So, continue what you're doing. And in the comments below, post what your reaction to all this. I'd love to hear your guys' reaction to Medvedev's Telegram post. I'd love to hear what you think about, what he laid out is their, reasoning, authorization to come after us. So what do you think about that, everybody? And once again, if you enjoy this, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And welcome to all the new people here. Till next time, keep your ear to the ground and head on a swivel.